explainer. Today, we're jumping into a wild, really ambitious idea that asks a fundamental question. What if our theories about the world don't just describe reality, but actually build it? We're going to dive into a model with a pretty intense name, the delta t squared, or the double transversal transjective quadratic model. But trust me, at its heart is a powerful question about the very nature of our existence.
So let's start right there. This model basically challenges everything we think we know about how we understand the world. It suggests that our maps of reality, our scientific theories, our social structures, haven't just been a little bit off, they've been fundamentally flawed. Why? Because what if the map isn't separate from the territory? What if the very act of mapping creates the land we're standing on? Yeah, it's a big idea.
So, here's our game plan for breaking this all down. First, we're going to get our heads around the core idea, this model as a totally new blueprint for reality. Then we'll look at the transjective engine that makes it all run. After that, we'll explore its two main parts, the theory and the practice, before we get to the architect's ultimate kind of mind-bending vision.
All right, first up, the blueprint itself. What makes this model so different from, any other theory you might have read in a textbook?
Okay, this right here is the absolute key takeaway. Most theories are kind of like a photograph of a car. They just describe it from the outside. But the delta t square model says, nope, I'm not the photo, I am the car's engine. It's an active piece of machinery that builds a reality. It completely throws out that old scientific idea that a theorist can just stand on the sidelines and observe without actually affecting the game.
And this quote, wow, it really captures the sheer scale of the ambition here. The model isn't just trying to make a few little tweaks. The goal is to fundamentally bend the ontological curvature. That's the very shape and rhythm of how life itself unfolds. We're talking about changing the underlying physics of our social world.
So you might be asking, how in the world does a theory actually do something that massive? Well, the answer lies in its core mechanism, the engine that powers this whole thing. It's built on a couple of key ideas with some admittedly dense-sounding names, but stick with me here.
So the first big idea is transjection. And there's a reason this is a brand new term. Think about a really great conversation. It's not just one person projecting their idea onto another. Transjection says the real meaning, the magic, happens in that shared relational space between people. It's born in the very act of communication itself.
And this wild-looking word on the slide, it perfectly describes the kind of structure that transjection builds. Flat, rhizomatically polycentric. I know, it's a mouthful, but it breaks down pretty simply. Flat just means no boss at the top. Rhizomatic means it's all interconnected like a dense root system, where any point can connect to any other. And polycentric means it has many centers of power, not just one. Okay, so with that engine in mind, let's look at the first half of the model, which the author calls Opus 1. This is the theoretical foundation. This is where the core pillars get laid out.
The absolute bedrock of this theory is a concept called non-autoanthropology. Basically, it's a total rejection of the modern Western idea of the self-made individual. It argues that the I we all think we are is, well, it's kind of an illusion. In reality, we are all products of a vast relational network that came long before us and will continue long after us.
And this whole theory is built on four interconnected pillars. First up, neuroarchitecture, the idea that our brains and our buildings literally create each other. Next is flat naturalism. This is the view that nature itself is already a flat, self-organizing system, no CEO required. Third, we have radical unschooling, which is all about ditching classrooms for learning through embodied, hands-on ancestral practices. And finally, cosmology, which is about connecting our tiny local lives to the grand structure of the entire universe.
Now, what's so cool about the model's structure is the symmetry. As you can see, this first part, the theory, it moves from the tiny scale of a single brain in a building all the way up to the cosmic scale. But as we're about to see, the second part, the practice, flips that completely on its head.
And that brings us to part two, the practice. This isn't just abstract thought anymore. This is a living, breathing laboratory. And that lab has a specific address, the Kenamagora Mansion in Sierra Leone, the real-world proving ground for all these radical ideas.
This is so important to understand. The mansion isn't just some picturesque backdrop for the theory. It is the theory in action. It's the proof of concept. These ideas are tested and proven, not in some academic paper, but in the daily life of the compound, in the rhythm of work, the heat of the sun on a wall, in the way people actually move through the space.
So this practical side also has 4 stages, but remember, this time we're moving from the macro down to the micro. It starts with the biggest tool we have, language itself, by creating new words. From there, it moves into a political vision called JOA, which is basically an optimistic, Afrocentric way of accelerating social change. Then it gets into theological poetics, using the precise language of spirituality to shape goals. And it all culminates in neoculturation, a living, utopian experiment in building new post-colonial ways of being together.
Let's just zoom in on that first node for a second. New words. The model deliberately invents words by mashing up different languages like Creole, French, and Mende. And, as you can see here, these aren't just clever labels. The theory argues they are literal instruments of world-making, tools that allow you to build realities that simply didn't exist before you had a word for them.
Okay, so where is all of this going? What's the ultimate goal of this entire, incredibly complex architecture?
The final piece of this puzzle is called the exo-psychoanalytic coda, and it's a wild idea. It basically says, let's take psychology out of the individual's head and out of the therapist's office. Instead of trying to fix people one by one, what if we could engineer mental well-being directly into the architecture and the social rules of the community itself?
And this results in a truly radical idea, panopticon benevolence. It takes the classic prison model of surveillance, the panopticon, and completely inverts it. Here, total visibility isn't about control. It's a form of mutual care, a community holding itself in what the text beautifully calls covenantal tenderness.
And a community built on that kind of mutual care, it leads to the ultimate state of being required by the model, radical humility. And this isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about a profound, gut-level recognition that you are just one part of a life-giving network that is vastly larger and more complex than any single person could ever hope to control or create alone.
So in the end, the model argues that its 2 halves, the abstract theory and the messy, lived practice, they aren't separate at all. They are, as the text says, the 2 hands of a single gesture of world-making. It's a powerful suggestion that things we often treat as opposites, like modern technology and ancient wisdom, can actually work together to build something entirely new.
Which leaves us with one final thought. If this model is right, if our words really are tools for building worlds, then what new reality would you try to create? It's a provocative question that gets right to the heart of this entire project.